So just like we did before, we could of course do very sophisticated different validations. We could go in action by action and change things. But there are some pretty funny stuff we can do simply, right? Want to keep this simple. Um, and it's basically here. When you look at the parameters, we are now using kind of a temporary parameter space. You can actually go ahead and save this directly into data, and then it will show up under the test data tab. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and just say, this is my user data. And now you see there's a checkbox saying the parameter value will change to test user data. This just means that the test will still run the same way. So if I close this, I go into test data, and let's say I put here again, James Ljunggren, and I play this test, it will basically just use the data from the test tab. So this is good, right? Because now you have like temporary test data here, but when someone calls the test case, you could still override the data. So you have a default behavior, and you can also send into the parameter and override the data that this test case takes, right? Which is very good. I can unit test the test in itself, and then I can use it upstream by other test cases, right? So that means, for instance, if something big changes here, I can update the change and make sure it works, not by calling this upstream test case, but still I can call the same test case with data and it will be overridden. So it's a kind of like a unit test, and then you can also use that in a bigger context. One more thing I want to show you before leaving form fills. Under test data here, we also have a way, of course you can use a JavaScript function to generate the whole JSON in user data under here. But we also have something very powerful, which is a regex data engine. So if you go under settings and content policy, you can find a number of reverse regex generators, and they take field mapping, right? When we try to guess a password, and you can just enter all these things and you can basically autofill data. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to use one of these now. So I'm going to use, let's say I want to generate random emails all the time. I'll just hit email and it's going to give you a regexp here. So now I can run this and just generate a new random email for every time I run the test case, which is of course useful. For instance, when you have perhaps a unique email list, a unique ID, and you want to be able to create a lot of users without hard coding a number of IDs. So let's just try this. As you can see, it generated according to the setting that I specified here under settings content policy, which is under email, you'll see bsaid mail, right? This regular expression. And if I go back, I can run it again and I will get a different email for the user. And observe, right, how in the validation it still uses the parameter. So still it passes the validation even though the data gets updated.